There was a law in 1661 that was passed called For the Better Ordering and Governing of Negroes.
Yes.
And I think one of the things that this law did, correct me if I'm wrong, was that it clarified the differences between slaves and indentured servants. So there were also indentured servants in Barbados. What were the differences?
It's quite fascinating because, of course, we forget now that on mainland America and in the Caribbean, the first servants were indentured white laborers who worked a term. They were given in exchange for their passage over to the Americas. They were given they worked for 5 years, or it could be 6 or 7, depending on the agreement they had with their owners, and then they were free, and they were given a certain amount in the hope that they could then start a new life in the new world. So it was. Barbados, like much of the Americas, was actually initially a European world, the dominant workforce being white and the owners also being white. And so therefore you had. It was only after the kind of realization that sugar was going to be able potentially to make the money it was going to, that they realized that they simply didn't have the same stock available of white indentured servants that they would need, and hence shift over to slavery. So the white indentured servants worked in parallel in the early days with black slaves, and there was an enormous sense that it was important that these two groups didn't become close. There were a number of rebellions where the two groups worked together because they were actually, of course, suffering the same much of the same terrible ill treatment and abuse and neglect. So the laws of 1661 made a real effort to give certain privileges to white indentured servants that were not given to the black workers, in order that the two groups would not feel that they had common cause, so that they would not get together. And mainly they made a lot of there was a lot of racial significance put on the separation between these two groups. It's fascinating to see how racism is clearly invented at this point. There's a letter by one planter being sent home saying, we describe ourselves here as the term whites, he said, is how we describe Europeans here. And they really created that term whites in order to separate themselves from blacks, who were therefore became the kind of the complete opposite, and so on. It was a very, very canny move to make sure that these two groups didn't come together.